So hello and thank you all for being here today. My name is Genevieve Lyson. I'm lead organizer at the Maine People's Alliance, and I'm from Lewiston originally. We're here today because enough is enough. We're here today to call out 3 landlords in the city who profit off housing our city's most vulnerable residents. And we're here today to release and share findings from a report that we've compiled over more than 6 months of research. Unfortunately, residential property has not experienced the same renewal as other parts of our downtown. In fact, fires, foreclosures, and neglect have caused this area to be littered with abandoned and condemned properties and with vacant lots. The actions of this small group of callous slumlords has dragged this city down as a whole. This is an issue that affects all of us, all of the residents of Lewiston, not just those that are forced to live in deplorable conditions like the building behind us. The report shows that 62% of residents surveyed who live in the properties in question reported ongoing problems with pests, plumbing, and safety issues. Their complaints were directed to code enforcement, and there are records showing that the landlords in question are serial violators of code in this city. Today we'll hear from tenants who've experienced the horrors of living in a place like the one we stand in front of today. We'll also hear from a doctor about the impact of poor housing conditions on our residents' health, from a landlord that's learned how to do business in this community and do right by her tenants at the same time, from a tenants' rights expert about the history of abuse in this building, and from a candidate for mayor here in Lewiston. First, I'd like to ask Sean, who's a resident of 32 Horton, the building we're standing in front of, to share his story about living and dealing with Rick Lockwood as a landlord.
Yeah. Hey, Sean.
Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
There he is. My name is Sean, and I've lived here at 32 Horton Street, building owned by Investment Properties by Frederick Lockwood. When I moved here, there were giant holes and leaks in the walls and the floors. There were also cockroaches and bed bugs. Less that, a month after I moved in the apartment, I asked Lockwood to make repairs. He wouldn't make repairs. Never heard back from him. And that's wrong by any landlord. Okay? I contacted him several times, and he would not answer me back. And I'm aging, I'm mentally and physically disabled, and I don't need to deal with this kind of stuff. He should have been doing this.
Right.
And he knew that before I come in. And because I stopped the rent because I had to make the repairs, he threatened to kill me.
That ain't right.
That ain't right.
Whoa.
And that is not right.
That is not.
Okay? Code enforcement come over to the apartment and done what they had to do and found that the place was not livable. They asked me to move. Lockwood recently shut off my power, which this is wrong. And, well, and I got to bring this up. Now that they're threatening to shut off the gas, which is hot water, and all of that, which is not right because there's kids in the building. How can a landlord do that
That ain't right.
and get away with it? It's not right. When tenants demand to be treated with dignity and respect, our landlord should actually say something about that and do something about that.
Absolutely.
But they don't want to do that. So, as far as I'm concerned, the landlord that is here is nothing but a slumlord.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And, the buildings that are contained in the report that folks are referencing today, there are 71 buildings in total, which are controlled by 12 shell corporations that are affiliated with the 3 landlords, Ted West, Rick Lockwood, and Joe Dunn, that we're talking about today. The next person I want to welcome up to speak is Alice Haynes, a local doctor who can talk a little bit about the health implications of poor housing on our community.
Yeah. Hey, Alex.
Hi, my name is Dr. Alice Haynes. I'm a family doctor and I have an office in downtown Lewiston. I was asked to speak about the health hazards in some of the housing here in Lewiston, about lead paint and lead dust about exposure to excessive cold and damp, about the effects of mold, especially black mold, on allergies and on the lungs. They asked me to speak about the suffering and the disease created by pests like bedbugs and rats. Our whole community pays for lost work days from asthma and sometimes pays for years of disability caused by asthma or lung fibrosis. But really, you know this already, don't you? You don't need a doctor or a nurse to tell you about these things. This is common decency. If bedbugs were in your home, disturbing your sleep, if the itch from their bites kept your children from concentrating at school, you'd go to great lengths to exterminate them. You also already know that the little ones are the most in danger. This is common sense. You wouldn't let a kitten lick lead dust. You wouldn't house puppies in a freezing cold kennel. And I know you'd never allow rats around your children because they bite and leave disease in their urine and droppings. There are perhaps a few medical details that I can add. Though many Americans have asthma, you may not know that mold in damp walls and in leaking ceilings worsens wheezing. It can take a mild case of asthma and make it severe. Our whole community pays for the extra emergency visits, for the extra hospital stays, for the extra intensive care. For some poor souls, the body's reaction to black mold causes permanent scarring, known as fibrosis of the lung. But an internist could tell you these things. So could a pulmonary specialist, or an emergency room nurse, or a public health nurse. For that matter, employers will witness to employees who are torn between working and getting the heat and hot water fixed in their apartments. Principals and teachers will tell you about students who sleep in class because they were kept awake the night before by bed bugs or by the freezing cold. Our newspaper reports that childhood lead exposure causes hyperactivity and learning disabilities. Even the code officers, the mayor, the landlords can tell you the health effects of poor housing. A family doctor specializes in the care of family and community. I'm here to encourage you to treat this illness of apathy that we are suffering from, this illness which allows our neighbors to be ill-treated. Let us hope that overburdened government employees will begin to enforce the current laws regarding safe housing. Let us hope that landlords will begin to comply with those laws. Let us hope that the citizens of Lewiston will elect civil servants who are convinced that unhealthy living conditions must end in this city. This community is strong, and it can grow into a showcase of safe and healthy housing. Prevention is important, but the housing conditions here are already severe. You know that in urgent situations, a patient may have to swallow bitter pills. It's time to take our medicine, time to invest money in these buildings, time to risk offending others, and time to call for justice.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice, for offering that really critical perspective and critical reminders that, housing in this condition is translating to everyday health effects for our most vulnerable citizens. And one of those citizens is Alita, who has had some health issues and has lived in a property of Joe Dunn's. Thankfully, she's just got out, so I'll ask Alita to come up and read her statement now.
Yeah, Lita.
Thank you, Lita.
There you go, girl. You go get him.
Hi, my name is Alita Jones, and I moved into 40 Blake Street, apartment 2 in Lewiston, Sullivan Properties. I have lived in this apartment since last winter. Joe is a corporate slumlord, and I have experienced one problem after another. And during those problems, I have let's see, I have considered one problem after another. When I moved into this apartment, it was disgusting. It was damaged, right? There was human feces in the bathroom, in the closet, on the floors. The floors were falling apart. I gave Joe a month to do the work. After the month, he didn't do anything. Only thing he did was paint the walls. Because I had already paid my security deposit and I needed a place to live, um, let's see, because I started doing the work myself. I retiled 2 floors, replaced the kitchen floor. I brought a new toilet seat, and I fixed the showers, the shower light switch, and I had caps so I wouldn't get electrocuted while I was taking a shower. I should have. I shouldn't have had to worry about getting electrocuted while showering, but I did because the shower had loose wires. Now let me tell you about some of the power that I lost. I lost power. It happened 3 times since I moved in, for around a week each time, and each time power was gone out. I lost a refrigeration full of food, a total of 3 months worth of food at $300. I only received $67 in food stamp a month. Now I'm afraid to buy more food because I'm afraid the power is going to go out. Joe, I don't want to live like this anymore. Okay, my downstairs neighbor contacted code enforcement about the power. They came to the building and showed us how to switch the fuses so that when switch the fuses and buy new ones. They gave Joe 60 days to fix the fuse box, but he still didn't. He still hasn't done it after 4 months. He should deal with this, not us. He should deal with the electricity going out, not us. Between me and the guy downstairs, we had a lot of problems. The building is also full of black mold. This black mold is everywhere. It has affected my health. The apartment smells of mold. The building smells of mold. The bathroom is probably the beams. It's probably in the beams in the bathroom and the structure. I regularly scrub the mold from the showers. I have lung problems, and because of the mold, I contacted pneumonia 3 times since I moved in. Further, the black mold has worsened my COPD, my asthma. This building is making me sick. It's hard. It's hanging around. If I hang around, I'm going to die. I'm not going to let Joe Dunn kill me. I'm fighting Joe in court with Pine Tree Legal, and I am winning. What he is doing is not fair. It is not right, and it is hurting me and other tenants. We damned today that Joe Dunn, Rick Lockwood, and Ted West stop retaliating, start repairing, and reimbursing tenants for the repairs and pest abuse, abandonment, abatement, and we're all had to do in our absence, and we ask that code enforcement follow through in ensuring that these complaints are dealt with in a timely way.
Thank you,
Thank
Alina.
you.
Thank you.
Repair, don't retaliate.
Next, I'd like to welcome Betty Ann Sheets, who's a Lewiston landlord, to offer her perspective about being a landlord here and how to do it well.
Go, Betty Ann.
Hi, I'm Betty Ann, and I am a Lewiston landlord, and it is hard. But most jobs are. I have good tenants and I have challenging tenants, just like any worker has good co-workers and any worker has challenging co-workers or challenging clients. I follow the laws of the city, the state, and the federal government, but I also follow my conscience. I try to treat my tenants as co-workers, treating them with respect and with dignity. In return, I expect them to maintain their apartments. I treat them as clients with a financial obligation to me, rent, for providing them goods and services. The goods and services are safe apartments in good operating condition with heat and hot water. I do not treat my tenants as cash cows. I do not treat my buildings as wells to run dry before moving on. I've owned 2 buildings in Lewiston for 10 years now. I've added new roofs to both buildings, a new heating system in one, and added insulation everywhere I can think of. These investments cost me a lot of money, but I hope they will save me money in the long run because I am in it for the long run. And so are my tenants. The first lease that I authorized when I bought the buildings for a family is still living in the same apartment 10 years later. While my tenants understand that these are my buildings, I understand that these are their homes.
Here.
I want their children to be safe. So I've worked with the city and entered a lead abatement program. Some people are afraid of having the city come to their apartments. I welcome them. I've invited the city in to help get the lead out. We landlords are in it for the money, that is true. But you can make a reasonable profit and do it right. But the few landlords who take advantage of the system and take advantage of their tenants by purchasing buildings, running them down, and leaving the empty shells for the city to dispose of cost us all money. The city pays the price of demolition or rehab, the loss of property tax basis, and the cost of manpower in the city taking care of the complaints. Other homeowners lose the value in their homes when the homes around them are in bad condition, and we pay higher property taxes that result when the city loses tax revenue. Good landlords also incur the added costs, and good landlords lose when tenants come to expect poor quality and poor treatment and give their landlords poor treatment and their rentals poor treatment in return. Better regulation enforcement makes us better landlords and makes Lewiston a better place to live for everyone. And I have to say, in the foot of that building, to have this building is embarrassing. We should have the places around that shine. Oops.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you so much, Betty Ann. I'd like to welcome Melissa, who is a tenants' rights advocate and expert who works with the Neighborhood Housing League here locally in Lewiston, has a long history with this property.
Good morning, my name is Melissa Dunn. I'm a tenants' rights community organizer for Neighborhood Housing League, a project of the Visible Community, and I'm also a resident of downtown. Safe, healthy housing is a human right and a vital lifeline that families depend on. The reality for many families is that adequate housing is out of reach. Our housing stock is in some of the poorest conditions in our entire state. We live it every day. Yet poor housing has been accepted as the norm in this community for generations. We are here today to call out corporate slumlords who are to blame for giving Lewiston a bad name. Frederick Rick Lockwood of Investment Properties LLC, Joe Dunn and Deborah Sullivan of Sullivan Properties, or SPM, and Ted West continue to threaten the lives, health, and well-being of Lewiston's own, our most vulnerable, our hardworking families and individuals, and our children. As outlined in this report, these three landlords control more than $10 million worth of housing stock in the neighborhood. Again, these three landlords control more than $10 million worth of housing stock in this neighborhood. We are nearing the 1-year anniversary of when I first stepped through the doors here at 32 Horton. After months of degradation and horror. Within these walls, plexiglass takes the place of missing glass panes in the windows. It's actually screwed. Lead paint is not only visible from the outside on the door and porches, but it's well known to the landlord, who continues to move unsuspecting families in, potentially exposing their children to lead. And pest infest each crevice without treatment, and there's no hard-working smoke detectors. They're missing. While tenants speak up and ask for help, slumlords retaliate by turning off electricity, hot water, heat, and pursue eviction to assert their power and keep families in fear. Families have not caused this. They're not even victims of circumstance. They're victims of repeated abuse and exploitation from these landlords. We are in a fight for housing justice. Neighborhood Housing League stands united with families who are demanding corporate slumlords like Rick Lockwood and Joe Dunn treat them with dignity. The League has one message for slumlords: we are people, we're not for profit. We expect code enforcement will follow up on these concerns we're presenting today and to follow through to make sure that not one more family will be subjected to reprehensible conditions. We must unite in pursuit of housing justice. I'm asking you to stand up and fight for what's right for all of Lewiston's families. We have a chance to come together. The time for housing justice is now.
Yeah!
Thank you so much.
People over profits.
People over profit.
People over profits.
Thank you guys, and thank you, Melissa, for sharing a little context around the history here. I want to welcome Ben Chin, a candidate for mayor, while we invited all of the mayoral candidates that are running for Lewiston this November. Ben came to stand with tenants and has some words about what he's heard today and what he read in the report.
Yeah, hey Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Loud.
All right. My name is Ben Chin, and I am a candidate for mayor of Lewiston.
Yeah!
I am the political director of Maine People's Alliance, and I am proud today to stand shoulder to shoulder with these tenants who have been brave enough to step up and share their experiences with the public. Our current mayor was invited today. He said he had more important things to do. Sadly, I am not surprised. For too long, the political leadership of our city has refused to name the names of those who profit from exploiting our neighbors and destroying our property tax base. That free ride ends today with the release of this report from Maine People's Alliance. It details how Joe Dunn, Rick Lockwood, and Ted West suck value out of property, invest little to nothing in its rebuilding, and expect taxpayers to pay for tearing their buildings down. These men give good landlords a bad name. They ruin our city's reputation. They block economic development, and the time for dealing with them behind closed doors is over.
Yes.
Here is what I learned from this report. Together, these three men own or finance property worth $10 million of assessed value. That would make them the 9th largest property taxpayer in Lewiston. And that would be equivalent to Gendron & Gendron Construction Company. They use at least 29 different shell companies to do this. 34 of their 55 properties have a pattern of major code violations. 69 tenants surveyed reported major violations, many of which were afraid to discuss with Lewiston code enforcement for fear of retaliation. And although they have no storefront, Ted West's corporate network is likely the single largest financer of housing property downtown. They're directly connected to too big to fail banks like Wachovia and Wells Fargo, and they use some of the same predatory lending practices that led to the Great Recession. They regularly lend to Dunn and Lockwood and notorious landlords like Travis Sewell, who served federal prison time for fraud. In 2004, they were fined $53,000 from the EPA for failing to disclose lead paint that led to children being poisoned. It doesn't have to be this way. I support the recommendations in this report for a three-pronged approach to the issue of transparency, proactive code enforcement, and investing in good landlords. But I'd go beyond that. Right now, at the very least, these tenants deserve their money back. Joe Dunn, Rick Lockwood, and Ted West, it's time for a refund. And finally, to everyone who wonders if our city can make a comeback, who paid rent but still spent the night shivering next to an open oven, who struggle to pay their bills while Wall Street profits off their rent, for everyone who fears to speak up because of the landlord or the boss, I want you to know I have your back. I will not allow the privateers of poverty to continue these deplorable practices. Everyone, rich, poor, black, white, immigrant, or native born, has a stake in righting this wrong. If we dare to believe in each other, to believe that unity beats poverty and greed beats compassion and hope beats old guard cynicism, then we can build a city that works for everyone. We need to close down the low road. The time for change is now.
Yeah.